Okay, so we are popping back to continue to chat a little bit about differences between groups, right? So we introduced, the kind of groups that we had before, right? And so we'll continue sort of this example, right? So a lot of this should sound very familiar, right? Very, it should be something that's easy enough to comprehend, right? So, the first thing, right, is that, we want to focus on a proportion, right? As a brief reminder, right, the way that we, identify proportions, right, is if we have, let's say, this is an arbitrary number, we would have, 57 over 134. So let's say there were 57 people out of 134 that supported the recall election of, Gavin Newsom or something like that. So we would divide by this and then multiply by 100 to get a percentage. But in this group right here, right, this is the proportion of whatever that evaluates to be. So sometimes, right, when we're looking and investigating into different things, right, we want to find out the difference between groups. So in this case, right, the example that I use in there, right, is in the notes. There's a number of Dodger fans and Astro fans who believe that the Astros should be stripped of their World Series title. Plot twist, spoiler alert, they should. So when we talk about like this kind of thing, right, we're looking to see what the difference is between groups, right? Because we can look at numbers, right, and we can eyeball it, right, and see, something's different, right? So if we saw, like 0.6, we'd be like, oh, that's a pretty high number for one group, right? But if we saw, 0.57, we'd also say that's a high, right? So what this kind of test, what this kind of thing to do, what is happening is that we are assessing how different groups are from one another. That is the key, takeaway from this is that we want to be in a position where we're assessing, are these groups actually different from one another? Oh, I forgot to put in my mic. Now it should be crispy, clear audio recording, hopefully, anyway. So when we're assessing how these groups differ from one another, and how that's ultimately what we're going to do, right? Because we can see these and we can see, yes, like visually we know, and it's a difference of 0.0, different 3, right? So when we are thinking about are these differences actually statistically significant, right? So statistically significant, right? That's not really something we can, evaluate and decide right now, right? So we can see, 0.03. What we're really trying to do then is, assess if this is basically 0. This is basically 0. So that is the goal, right? And as we've discussed already in times before, right? So we look at, differences between two groups. So that's the first part, right? We calculate the standard error, which gives us a measure of uncertainty. So like, how do we feel about this? Is this really different? Is it not really different, right? And, we can also look at a confidence interval to see, how really different it is. And with this information, right, we can then, divide the estimate by the standard error to get an expression or decision on if these groups being actually different from one another. And so we leverage and utilize all this information to make that happen. So that's that's in the name of the game, right? So what we end up doing then, so we'll actually my pen's dying. So we'll go ahead and pause this video and then we'll kind of work through an example in the next